You're listening to Life, the Universe, and Everything Else. Today on the show, where's my jetpack?
Life, the Universe, and Everything Else explores issues of science, critical thinking, and secular humanism. If you have questions or comments about the show, or you'd like to suggest a topic, you can find us on Twitter or Facebook, or send us an email at lueepodcast@winnipegskeptics.com. Show notes and references can be found at lueepodcast.com.
My name is Ashlyn Noble, and I'll be your host this evening. With me today, I have Laura Creek Newman.
Hi there.
Jem Newman.
Hello.
And Lauren Bailey.
Hi.
So we wanted to talk today about some science fiction technology that has made it into the real world. We've all had a bit of a week, and it's going to be a bit more conversational than usual, meaning we didn't really write segments. And we're going to talk about sci-fi tech anyway. It's going to be great. So my topic is virtual reality. While researching this topic, I discovered that the definition of virtual reality is way more controversial than I expected. When I say virtual reality, what comes to the minds of my co-hosts?
90s movies where somebody is like in one of those VR things in the mall with the giant headset and there's usually a big apparatus around them and then hijinks ensue.
Hijinks, yes.
Jeff Bridges getting zapped by a laser and pixelated and sucked into the computer.
An old dude riding a fake motorcycle really loudly on my television all friggin' afternoon.
It was a 2-minute video clip, Lord.
It felt like forever.
Okay. But seriously, like Oculus Rift, basically PlayStation VR.
You want to explain that to our less tech-savvy listeners?
Yeah, basically you have a headset on with some level of motion tracking. The headset will have 2 stereoscopic screens, one for each eye, so that you can see in 3 dimensions, you can perceive depth. You turn your head, and that turns your view in the world. And sometimes you move around and trip over your coffee table, and in so doing, move your avatar in the virtual world. And then you vomit, because we still can't really manage movement properly.
And then you trip over the cat.
Yeah.
And then your kid starts screaming.
Or holodeck is the ideal. And when I worked at a laser tag arena, we had like a very 90s one, and now it's something in between. I don't know.
Yes, the holodeck would be ideal, where you can sort of go into the room and everything transforms and it's a seamless reality. Mm-hmm. But we all know bad things happen on the holodeck, so perhaps it's best that we don't get that technology anytime soon. Would any of you consider a Viewmaster to be virtual reality?
What?
Do you remember Viewmaster?
Yes.
Yeah, it had like those little cartridges that you go chuk and you can see different things,
like,
right?
12 little film bits.
I was
I've
actually
heard this argument. Yeah.
I was really wanting one of those for the kids.
And you can
those are cool.
So you stick basically like your eyes in there, and you get a really long, like a wide view all the way around, and it looks like you're there. That's virtual reality.
Stereoscope is not virtual reality.
So some people would disagree. Some people think that Viewmaster is one of the steps on the road to virtual reality technology.
No, it's not. No.
It's a long road.
It is a long road.
It's a long road.
So
Getting from...
nearer to what we are probably thinking of. Oh no, she's going supersonic already.
It's been a long day.
So one definition that I found that I felt like probably encompasses what we are actually thinking about when we talk about virtual reality right now is the computer-generated simulation of a 3-dimensional image or environment that can be interacted with in a seemingly real or physical way by a person using special electronic equipment, such as a helmet with a screen inside or gloves fitted with sensors.
Yeah.
That kind of match what everybody's thinking.
The thing that makes it is the interact with.
Yes, that is the key part of the definition.
Because I can't put my hand out in front of the Viewmaster, and my hand is now at Disney World with Donald.
Yeah. Did you have the Disney World version as well? I had a Disney World Viewmaster.
My friend did. I did not have I did not have a Viewmaster.
I can't believe I was ever that fascinated with some pictures.
It's great. It's great.
I had a whole bunch of like nature ones.
Yeah. Anyway.
So by that definition, it's like simple augmented reality, like AR, would also be virtual reality, right?
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah. There's a huge range, but it has an interesting history, and some of the ideas of when virtual reality began in fiction are even more of a stretch than the Viewmaster thing. For example...
Oh, no.
Does anybody have any idea how far back the idea of virtual reality in fiction might go?
I'm going to say Jules Verne, because everything goes back to Jules Verne.
Okay.
But somebody can probably, like, make up some Greek god bullshit or something. I don't know.
How about Plato?
I was going to say red pots. Yeah.
Yeah, so the whole idea of the
cave.
platonic ideal and the cave of things going by outside, and they've been the shadows portrayed on the cave walls.
Right.
And like
Okay.
that's a kind of virtual reality because people are.
Plato's cave.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So I read some weird theories about virtual reality today. Okay. So, discounting Greek philosophers,
As you do.
as you do, there have been virtual realities imagined in science fiction since at least the 1860s. People have come up with actually really good definitions of the way a virtual reality might work all the way back then. There's a guy named Antonin Artaud in 1860 who was, I think, a playwright, and he thought that viewers of a play should suspend reality and imagine that everything going on in front of them was actual reality, and should behave as such, which seems like a bad idea. Like, if you're in the audience of a play and a murder happens, you probably shouldn't believe that that's real and go up and try and stop it, etc.
I mean, there is a limit to suspension of disbelief.
Yes. From there's like a sci-fi Wikipedia that has a very, very long article about virtual reality and how it's been such a trope in sci-fi throughout the years that has a really good quote from it that I'd like to share. It says, "One reason why virtual realities have been popular so long in sci-fi is the somewhat recursive fact that stories themselves are virtual realities, though we interact with them only in a metaphoric sense. So the notion holds an intrinsic fascination for writers of stories, each of whom is, to a degree, a god creating an imaginary world which is real to the characters within it and partly real to the reader who shares their experience." I thought that was kind of cool. Authors are creating a virtual reality and we are participating in it by reading it and hallucinating.
Yeah.
Like that meme that goes around that, one of my hobbies is staring at dead trees and hallucinating. Tattooed dead trees, that's right. So, sneaking along the timeline of virtual reality is the aforementioned video clip that I found on YouTube of Morten Heilig's Sensorama.
That sounds fabulous.
Oh boy.
So this
Look it up.
This might be something that we would interpret as like the first true virtual reality experience. And it was this quite large machine that you could sit on, and it promised that there would be sound and aroma and vibration.
It's a 4D movie theater?
Smell-o-vision.
And so you sat on the seat and you sort of slid into the machine, and then there was a very short, very bad video clip of like a point of view on a motorcycle driving through the desert, and there was like a fan that would blow wind at you so that you felt like you were driving this motorcycle, and the motorcycle, I don't think that whatever you did on the seat would influence the movie because it was pre-recorded, but
what year was this?
He built the prototype of the Sensorama in 1962 and 5 short films to displayed in it. But he was not able to get any more funding for his project, so it kind of fizzled out after that.
So the smell part was like he'd just like throw gasoline around?
I was not able to find out what kind of smells were available, and the whole idea just horrifies me. So.
Like a scratch and sniff motorcycle?
Oh, God. It also had binaural sound, which was like a big deal for virtual reality back then.
Like stereo?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But there was, so you actually put your head like kind of inside the machine, so it came from both sides of you. So I guess it was a better experience of riding a motorcycle through the desert.
Okay.
How many dead mosquitoes did it throw at you?
No, thank you. So at about that same time, there was a team at MIT who was putting together this gigantic headset, and this was the first head-mounted display. And it was so heavy and so ridiculously large that it had to be suspended from the ceiling, and the people who saw it called it the Sword of Damocles. It's just hanging above you threateningly while you observe this thing.
Oh, that's really funny.
Yeah. And it had some computer screens, but it was 1968, so they were probably pretty primitive, and mostly the output on the screens was like cone-shaped things.
Talking like a oscilloscope sort of thing.
So science fiction has predicted and talked about the kinds of virtual reality that we have now for a long time. Talked about the holodeck and stuff might be one of the more well-known examples. By far, the most influential work of cyberpunk fiction is Neuromancer by William Gibson, and it was apparently inspired by an experience that he had in a Vancouver arcade.
Okay.
Not surprised.
Quote, "Even in this primitive form, the kids who were playing them were so physically involved, it seemed to me that they wanted to be inside the game, within the notational space of the machine. The real world had disappeared for them." So this inspired Neuromancer, and he wrote this in it, which was very early days of the internet, but it's interesting how he describes it in the book. "Cyberspace, a consensual hallucination experienced daily by billions of legitimate operators in every nation, by children being taught mathematical concepts, a graphic representation of data abstracted from the banks of every computer in the human system. Unthinkable complexity, lines of light ranged in the non-space of the mind, clusters and constellations of data, like city lights receding." And then this sounds very familiar to the technology that we have now. "Through the use of electronic mirrors inside the computer, this beam is made to sweep back and forth across the lenses of Hero's goggles, in much the same way as the electron beam in a television paints the inner surface of the eponymous tube. The resulting image hands in space in front of Hero's view of reality. So Hero's not actually here at all. He's in a computer-generated universe that's drawing onto his goggles and pumping into his earphones. In the lingo, this imaginary place known as the metaverse. Hero spends a lot of time in the metaverse. It beats the shit out of the you store it." And that is from Stevenson's Snow Crash, which is a cyberpunk novel from 1992. And so I think it's interesting how that would be a good way of describing like the PlayStation technology that we have now, though. You have goggles and you have a headset that goes over your ears, and it just sort of draws the universe in front of you. Yeah.
PlayStation VR. I don't have one, but I've got a PlayStation upstairs. I could get one.
No, you can't.
The only the only VR machine I played is the Virtual Boy. I played Mario Tennis with the red outlines.
Where is
We
my
have
virtual?
two of them.
Where are
Really?
They're over there.
they?
Are they with your Power Glove?
We
I don't have a power glove. I could bring one of the Virtual Boys out if you wanted to.
Amazing.
Like see it work.
Will it make me sick?
Yes.
Probably.
Probably not, because there's no motion involved. It's basically just a 3D monochrome, like stereoscopic 3D monochrome.
Well, you say
game.
probably not, but apparently about 40% of people who tried the Virtual Boy got really sick.
I feel like that was just from playing it too long. I don't know. It was very red and black. I played it for like 9 hours straight one day, and that was fine.
Yeah, fine.
Just fine.
I like Neuromancer quite a bit, and it also has one of the best opening lines. It has one of the top 10 all-time great opening lines. "The sky above the port was the color of television, tuned to a dead channel."
Lauren mentioned the Power Glove. The Power Glove was a very interesting piece of technology.
It's so bad.
It is
the wizard?
really the first affordable piece of quote-unquote virtual reality technology that you could take home. It was about $75 US at the time, which not super cheap, but you could get it.
It was not affordable for the Bailey household, I'll tell you that.
It was affordable for more people than other types of things, let's say.
So
No matter how much we beg.
there were 2 games that were supposed to work with it, but it did not work very well. So it was a glove that you could wear on your hand, and it had a controller on the outside of it, and it also had the numbers 0 to 9 so that you could program it a little bit, and you could operate it by punching and stuff. So it had a little bit of motion feedback kind of deal going on.
I've only ever seen it used a wrist-mounted controller, basically. Mm-hmm. I never saw it actually work with any sort of haptic, like, motion controls.
Oh dear. So yeah, there were 2 games that were supposed to work with it, and neither of them were ever properly released in Japan. So in Japan, the only way that you could actually use this controller was by programming it to work with your games, you know, in an extra way that they were not really supposed to. But there was like one sort of beat 'em up game where you could punch the bad guys, and a puzzle game. And there was also supposed to be like a Tetris style game where you could move around the pieces with the glove.
That would have been cool.
Yeah, and that never really happened.
Oh, like that would be really neat to physically be like, I want this block over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From your TV, it would be really cool for the time. And now we have the Wiimote, which kind of does that. But I feel like nobody would really call the Wiimote virtual reality now. But, you know, under part of our definition, there are haptics. You can feel the feedback and you can control things with the remote that you're not actually touching. So
I still, like, as cool as the idea of a power glove is, I have a hard time getting behind it because it doesn't feel immersive. You know, like, yeah, it has...
Even if you're using it to punch bad guys?
I guess in my mind, I have that idea of my eyes being totally focused on whatever else and having the outside world obscured from vision there. And so that, as much as I can interact with things and it's on the TV and it's real time, as close as that was for the time, it's still not... You know, I can still see just my TV screen, and then there's my bedroom wall, and there's the window, and there's people over there, right?
So
it's
virtual
not
reality
immersive.
to you needs to be completely taken over reality.
Yeah, it means that, like, reality is blocked out, and virtual reality is all that I can feel, but I also need to be able to interact with it. So it's not just, like, a movie in one of those pods at the flotation spa that we went to.
Would you need, like, actual physical feeling? Like, say you were to punch a dude in a game, would you need to feel as if your hand is being stopped?
I don't know.
Follow all the way through? Would that ruin the...
I haven't done it, so I don't know if I would need to feel that. I think that, like, you know, back in the N64 that had, like, the rumble packs on it, that was so cool and weird that I had that responsiveness. I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, I put a lot of Mario Kart with those rumble packs.
Yeah.
And you like the haptics on your phone, like when the little ball bounces and that...
Oh yeah, that is so addictive to me. I just have this ridiculous little game where you bounce a ball and you try and get it through the slots of this corkscrew thing. And because I can feel the little ball bouncing every time it hits something, it makes me want to play it for 10 hours straight. It's bizarre. So the cool consumer technology kind of took a break between 1970 and 1990, and it became sort of a thing that was used. They were developing a lot of cool, like, aviation and military and, like, medical applications for it, like training stuff for virtual reality. And so there wasn't a ton of different consumer products, but there was the Virtual Boy, which made a lot of people sick and was not very popular and was discontinued very quickly.
I was devastated because I loved my Virtual Boy.
I saw a screen capture of the tennis and, like...
Yeah, Mario Tennis. It's great.
Yeah, it looks kind of fun.
But I played it the one time in Kmart.
Yep. Yeah, I had Mario Tennis and the Wario game for it.
So in the 90s, it started becoming more of a consumer product. So there was the Sega VR headset, and then there was the Virtuality, which was a multiplayer networked VR entertainment system. And it had, like, a dedicated VR arcade at the Embarcadero Center in San Francisco. But it cost up to $73,000 per system.
Oh my god!
So it wasn't
That's not a consumer product.
No, it wasn't something you could take home, but it was something you could go out to do with friends.
Right.
You know, and a bunch of you could play together. And that has sort of had a resurgence lately. Like, there's one at the Outlet Mall here that Dave and I have been to, and it's really cool.
There's one in my old office building.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a few of them.
You've done it?
I have.
Have you done it, Lauren? Nope.
I got over 30, and all of that stuff just went, nope, you're too old for this crap.
And you haven't, eh?
I have not. I am concerned about feeling ill with these things.
It's worth a shot. Like, when I did it the one time, well, I'll probably get an Oculus Rift or something, and you can try it. But
Yeah, the one I chose, the one that Dave and I chose, I didn't want to play any sort of shooting game or flying through space shooting things.
That's a lot of them.
Yeah, but they had this game where you could, basically the whole point was to climb shit.
yeah,
And so it has two controllers, and you could like use them as hands and climb up walls and then jump and stuff. But when you jumped and missed, you fell, and it really felt like you were falling off a cliff.
Yep.
Which was it was quite an interesting experience the first 25 times that I fell off a cliff. And then you kind of got used to it, right? But I walked into walls all over. Like,
Was it cartoony, or was it?
it was pretty
more
cartoony,
photorealistic?
for this one. But they definitely had some realistic ones. But yeah, I smashed into the wall several times walking around, because you were supposed to only sort of walk around enough to orient yourself and then use the controller to move.
Yeah.
But I was bad at remembering that I was not a cartoon.
Yeah.
It was that immersive that I just kept
Cool.
walking into the wall.
Yeah. The one that I did, like, there were a couple like zombie shooting galleries or whatever, but the really cool one was literally just like you take an elevator up to the top of a building, and there's a plank, and you like walk out onto the plank and you look down.
Nope.
And it's
Nope.
super scary, and then
Not doing
you
it.
can like jump off, and then you can get like a jetpack and fly around, and
There's your jetpack.
yeah,
There's your jetpack.
there is my jetpack.
All right. Well, I think we've reached the end of our podcast. I think that's it, guys.
We
right?
found it.
It's
We
done.
found the jetpack.
So yeah, systems like that started appearing in the 90s. And then we sort of jumped to today, where we have really high quality virtual reality headsets that you can buy and use at home. Like, they're $600 or so as a peripheral for your computer. So like, again,
Yeah, you still need an expensive computer to run them.
yeah. So again, it's expensive, but it is attainable, like the $75 Power Glove was.
Yeah, it's not $72,000.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's still a little bit out of reach. And interestingly, a lot of what has made virtual reality in homes so possible is the fact that they use a lot of cell phone technology. So like a lot of the screen technology and the tiny little processors and
The gyroscopes and stuff like that.
yeah,
too.
all of the, I'm just moving my phone around to try and demonstrate my point.
Look at my wrist action.
Yeah, all of the stuff that tells your phone, how to play the little ball game is all part of virtual reality sets, and it's made it doable. And there's also ridiculous virtual reality systems like the Google Cardboard.
The what?
They sell a piece of cardboard, essentially, where you can put your phone 3 inches in front of your face and wear it like a virtual reality set.
Yep.
I haven't heard of this.
It's a real thing.
The look on Laura's face right now.
God.
You basically, like, you've seen the Nintendo Labo things. It's
Yeah.
predates that, but yeah, you can just fold it up, stick it on your head, slot your phone in there, and your phone is your VR screen.
I think I have seen something like that, but I thought it was somebody's, 10-cent version of VR that they're like, look how cool I am. I didn't realize Google was being assholes and selling those.
Real product by Google.
Do they sell it? I thought you could just print it.
You can
print it
probably
out,
just
yeah.
print it out, but I did see it for sale somewhere.
Okay.
Something that is kind of related, but not quite on the same vein, is holograms and stuff that they're now starting to do, for news programs and for performances, like the Michael Jackson thing, where they had him perform years after he died. And the holograms that I really like are, you can build these little prisms for your phone, and then there are apps and programs that will let you basically make a hologram on top of your phone. So
that's cool.
It's similar to the Google Cardboard thing, where it's a cheap version of the cool thing that other rich people have.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
Virtual reality, been a science fiction trope since maybe Plato, depending on your definition. And now
That well-known science fiction, speculative fiction author.
he was kind of.
Yeah, okay, fair.
And now it's something that we can have in our own homes and pretend to be climbing up giant cartoon walls and smash into walls.
I really want, haptics. Full-body haptic suits, so you can, actually move around and feel things.
Do you want, like, the omnidirectional treadmill underneath you so you can actually walk around?
Yeah,
Or-
like I don't, or like a ball.
That
or
is
whatever.
what I want with VR
Yeah.
stuff as it is.
I don't think it's
because I
really
don't want to walk
achievable,
into
though.
stuff.
I think
It would just have to
you
be a
need
giant
holodeck
ball
room.
under there, yeah.
Like, but like even a giant ball, like I think it's gonna feel weird.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, because you're
Gonna feel like you're on a treadmill. It's not gonna be like walking. I don't know. I think you need like a room. But I like. It's not just seeing. Like I want to be able to like touch stuff. Mm-hmm. Like I want to be able to like.
because
You're gonna feel like you're on a treadmill. It's not gonna be like walking. I don't know. I think you need like a room. But I like. It's not just seeing. Like I want to be able to like touch stuff. Mm-hmm. Like I want to be able to like pick something up. You know
Pet
what
kitties?
I mean?
Virtual-
No. I've got cats. I don't want to pet them.
You're such a monster. You know that as soon as they have the ability for you to actually touch stuff in virtual reality, like, first there's going to be porn, and then there's going to be, like, cat petting games.
That's the order. Yeah.
There's already virtual reality porn.
Well, yeah, but, like,
Yeah.
you know, once you can feel things, that's going to be the number one
yeah,
application.
Like
God.
so the one thing that you have to imagine when you imagine the Star Trek universe is the people whose job it is to squeegee out the holodeck.
No, that thing is self-cleaning, man. Like, come on.
They just reverse
shower room.
osmosis everything in there, and
Well, yeah, like one of the reasons it's so bad when it goes wrong is because like I think in an early, it might be the Big Goodbye, one of the early holodeck goes wrong episodes. They're like, oh yeah, we can't just shut it off because it'll vaporize everybody inside. You're like, why would you build it that way?
so no one has to squeegee it.
Because Quark wouldn't clean those damn things.
Yeah, it's the oven, the self-clean oven setting.
Amazing.
I'm just going to burn everybody's memories out of here.
So speaking about holodecks, Lauren has a whole segment about Star Trek technology. You know that there's at least 2 generations of engineers and scientists, including astronaut Dr. Mae Jemison and NASA engineer Harold White, that have been inspired by Star Trek. It's hard not to be inspired by the gleaming chrome, or harvest orange, of the bridge, the handheld gadgets, and the medical advances. So let's take a look at how some of these extrapolate to the world around us today.
Please state the nature of the medical emergency.
This segment is dedicated to Laura and her love of all things Star Trek.
Thanks.
So item 1, my favorite, transparent aluminum. In Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, the bridge crew of the Enterprise time travel back to 1984 to rescue some whales and, well, if you're not familiar, you should watch it. Even if you are familiar, it's an even-numbered TOS movie, so it's a hoot. It was made in the mid-80s, though, so all relevant warnings apply.
With that caveat, it is
Yeah.
super great.
Suspend your reality.
Oh, Scotty talking to that computer.
Hello, computer.
Anyway, 1984 plexiglass was not strong enough to hold enough water to transport the 2 whales, George and Gracie, and their habitat while still being thin enough to make. So Scotty, after he figures out how to work the computer, shows the engineers in 1984 how to create the polymer transparent aluminum. Amazing. I've never seen this movie.
Me neither. I haven't.
I know what we're doing tonight. Sleeping?
It's fun. Like it's super campy.
Mm-hmm.
It is a fun movie.
All right, I'll watch it at some point as long as I can do something else well.
There are whales in it, so... Yep.
Star Trek: Save the Whales.
Today, we have transparent aluminum armor, which is both lighter and stronger than bullet-resistant glass. What?
Transparent aluminum armor?
Yeah, I was so excited when I heard that they had developed this, because I'm like, oh my god, Scotty. The US military, of course, has been testing a product called ALON, or ALON, which is made of aluminum oxynitride, which is aluminum, oxygen, and nitrogen. This polymer starts as a powder, which is molded, heated, and cooled rapidly. The strength and resistance of the cooled product is similar to sapphire, and it gets stronger and more clear with polishing. I don't know how it gets stronger with polishing, but some sort of witchcraft.
Huh. That's, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like bullet-resistant glass, the armor has layers. There's an outer layer that has the aluminum oxynitride, then there's the layer of glass, and then there's an interior layer, which is another polymer backing. This ALON can resist 50 caliber armor-piercing bullets, and it's really expensive, so it's not standard issue. It's wild to me to think that something made even partially out of glass can resist bullet-piercing armor.
Bullet-piercing armor and
Armor
anti-aircraft.
piercing bullet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Words. Armor.
Imagining like a giant bullet and like a piece of armor flying through it.
Bullet bill. Fruit Ninja.
No, that's what you have the star for. So you can explode bullet bill.
It can also withstand anti-aircraft guns. They are going to be...
How many of them?
Well, not like...
And at what range?
They're testing, but it's, again, way too cost prohibitive to put on the outside of all the U.S. military planes. And military.
Also heavy?
No, it's fairly light. You can wear it as armor.
Well, just because you can wear something as armor doesn't mean you can coat a plane in it.
No, but it is light enough to fly. Item 2 is the food replicator.
Tea Earl Grey, hot.
In the 24th century, replicators really took? Troublesome time travel tenses. Anyway, they take off. The original Star Trek series had food synthesizers that fed the crew food Lego. And the True! They were like little bricks. You would see the food synthesizers on the original Star Trek show.
TOS, yeah.
Yeah, TOS. And they would have like these little food jello molds that looked like Lego.
I believe you. It's just a really funny idea. That's
know.
why I laugh.
After the original series, the animated series from the 1970s showed synthesizers producing realistic-looking food. But Next Gen introduced the replicator. Originally presented as a way to order up food and then disappear the dirty dishes, replicators can create any inanimate matter as long as the desired molecular structure is on file. If you want to debate this in-universe extra complexity that forbids the replication of living beings, dilithium, or latinum, email Jim at... The best thing about replicators is that they can produce any foods ethically, perfectly, and instantly. The modern equivalent is still very far behind. 3D food printers can technically print with anything that can be pureed. Whatever is being printed must be forced through a syringe mechanism that can be extruded onto the plate.
Yep.
The result is very cool, but it takes a comparatively long time as opposed to just an instant food.
Just imagining, like, you punching in an order code for dinner, and then you hear that 90s printer noise.
Dot matrix.
Yes, the dot matrix printer noise.
Well, yeah, it's like, oh, you want, I don't know, mashed potatoes? That'll be 3 hours.
I think it's seen in Star Trek 6 where a bowl of mashed potatoes gets vaporized.
But there are, like, some really cool... pastry chefs in particular who are using 3D printers to make ridiculously cool stuff
As we saw in MasterChef Australia this past season.
Yeah, and I've also seen, like, some of those tasty videos going around of...
Yeah, like they usually, from what I can tell, it's usually for something that is far more about the look of food and being able to say that you made it of food as opposed to the taste and texture of it. Or it's, like a decal type thing, some kind of decoration, like using it for some kind of a sugary something or other could be a good option there. Or chocolate would be, like a 3D printer to use for chocolate would be great if you want to build certain things.
According to the 3D printing business directory, there are 15 companies at least that produce food-grade 3D printers. One is specifically for chocolate. There's one that's specifically for different types of cheeses.
Nice.
So that one is really interesting for cheeses because there are some cheeses that a pureed or like semi-liquid texture is perfectly fine, and there's other cheeses that you're like, what did you do to my Parmesan? Like, I just don't understand. Everything about the cheese does not make sense in the way it needs
Why
to
is
work.
everything Velveeta?
Well, yeah, exactly, because you could technically make a 3D printed pizza, but the cheese is going to be gross on it because
There is one specifically designed to do all the different layers in a pizza.
I think I saw that one too. But at least that or something to it, something similar. But they were saying the herbs and the cheese were still put on by hand. So they did the crust and they did the sauce, so you can get perfectly uniform things. But you still need to put, like, if you want shredded cheese, you still have to do that.
That crust is going to be terrible.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking, like, worse than Delicio. And that's pretty bad.
It's cardboard, basically.
Oh, yeah, because, again, it's prioritizing uniformity and function rather than texture and taste and anything that makes a good pizza crust good. One interesting application that I have seen of these things, though, is that companies are using it to make specifically pureed foods, but that look like what they are. So they'll take pureed carrots and they will 3D print them into like carrot coins. And so then for people who have dysphagia, particularly older adults, then you can serve them these things that look like carrots or they look like beans, and it's not just green mush on the plate.
I watched a video of them doing like this lobster dish with this pureed lobster, and then it ended up looking like real lobster.
Mm-hmm.
So they took a lobster, they pureed it, and then they printed it out into a lobster shape.
Yeah. But if you can't chew,
It's a lobster nugget.
I understand.
For the average person, it seems like, why would you do this? But for somebody who's only getting like mush, it's like, oh, this looks like a thing,
It's like the first year chemistry lab where you take copper and then you do a whole bunch of stuff to it and then you end up with copper at the end.
Yep.
It made me so mad.
these are not for you.
We did a whole bunch of things and now we just have less copper.
This is why alchemy doesn't work. And still, none of these food replicators will atomize my dirty dishes at the end.
Yeah, they gotta work on that.
None of them will also make me a cup of tea. Item 3. Tablets. Personal Access Data Device, which is also called a PAD.
The 2 Ds at the end.
Yep. NBC production budget constraints in the 1960s gave us the iPad. I'm serious. The original Star Trek series featured clean lines and touchscreens because the prop department couldn't afford knobs and dials and switches like in real spacecraft.
That's so funny. And now we're just like, get rid of all the buttons!
Yep.
That's so funny.
Everything needs to be smooth.
The computer screens on the Enterprise were called okudograms.
Named after Michael Okuda.
After their designer. Yeah, the graphics were created on transparent colored sheets and pasted onto the set.
Nice.
When the computer needed to do something new, artists could create a software upgrade that did what the plot required, with no hardware upgrades at all. Sound familiar? In the original series, officers used electronic clipboards, especially Uhura, with light-up buttons and styluses. By TNG, those had been replaced with pads, the personal access data devices, that are eerily similar in function and shape to our modern iPads and tablets. And that's not by accident, of course. Modern Apple products are designed with the comfort of the user in mind. The touchscreen and one-button design make them less intimidating than previous technologies, and much more akin to the super simple, no-budget Trekkian tablets. Item 4. Computer.
Accessing library computer data.
In 2015, the Amazon Echo hit the market. It's a product directly modeled after the all-knowing, omnipresent Star Trek computer. As of 2017, you can use the word computer to wake up your Alexa, and you can get a voice mod to make it sound like Majel Barrett.
We recently got an Alexa Dot because it came with the chair I bought. And our cat is named Lexa. So this has already caused several misunderstandings with our little computer.
Can you change what it's called?
Well, like Lauren was just saying, you can make it answer to computer.
Well, good, because I would imagine that would be very annoying for people named Alexa.
Yes.
We've changed the cat's name to Cake Pop. It's just easier. The developers specifically said that they were looking to model it and the whole immersive system after the Star Trek computer, which is really cool.
So, the one feature that I find very useful on it is the fact that you can set multiple timers at the same time and call them different things. So if we're making dinner, we often have like both our phone timers going and the microwave timer going, and instead you can just say, set another timer.
I do have a couple of other quickies because there's so much Star Trek tech that has just seeped into the real world. The iTop computers from TNG became the embarrassing Google Glass. No one uses it, so just forget about it.
The iTop computers. Do you mean from the game?
No, the Locutus of Borg thing that Picard heard.
That thing, yeah.
Video conferencing was a standard way for shows and movies, Trek included, to say, wow, we're living in the future here. Now we have products and software like FaceTime, Zoom, and Skype, and they mean I have to put on pants to answer the damn phone. Communicators are now small enough to be worn like a badge, similar to what's standard from TNG on. Some advanced hospitals and care homes are using them to avoid loud and obnoxious code calls in the hallways.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So it's nice and subtle. You get your little communicator. Universal translation is also now available. Well, for Earth-based languages anyway. It's not instantaneous, nor is it as seamless and perfect as that on Star Trek, but it's available. We have another 45 years before Zephyr Cochrane makes a crude warp flight, so we have time to perfect that technology.
I remember when I first saw the AR, live translation of, signs and stuff on an iPhone. That was a moment where I'm like, oh, we live in the future.
You live in a spaceship, dear.
Yeah.
Phasers became stun guns. The electrodes still need to make contact with the victim, but it's a weapon, so there's no telling how much money and time is available to perfect it. And that leads me to the not-so-good stuff.
Yeah.
You mean all technology is not good?
Bless your utopian heart. Keen observers of Trek know of the post-atomic horror, which is supposed to happen between 2054 and 2079. We first get an allusion to it in the makeup of the jury in Encounter at Farpoint, the pilot for TNG. The folks from the jury look like Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, Flash Gordon, and the villagers from Monty Python and the Holy Grail decided to have a costume swap and drink for 6 days straight.
It's true. Interesting point. That whole part of the episode was added because Paramount decided we want our first episode of this new show to be a two-parter, and they're like, sorry, what? Yeah, two-parter. And they're like, well, I guess we'll come up with something. So they added that whole Q plot. That's where Q came from.
During the time of this post-atomic horror, the Vulcans make first contact with humans because of Zephyr Cochrane, and in less than 2 generations, humanity was finally able to eliminate most, if not all, poverty, disease, war, and hunger. Along with these, a lot of other things disappeared from humanity, including hopelessness, despair, and cruelty. Right.
Good luck.
Yeah. Earth's governments all join together and form United Earth, which later becomes the United Federation of Planets. In less than 100 years, humans apparently get their shit together enough to eradicate most of the flaws that we've carried with us for the past few million years. And we form a huge government military industrial complex to rule the world. Yay!
Yeah, the more you learn about Star Trek, especially as it gets into DS9, you're like, oh, like, we think of this as a socialist utopia, but it's got to be tankies running the show, right?
It's totally tankies.
What are tankies?
Authoritarian communists.
Okay.
So, Star Trek Earth is a benevolent totalitarian society. Yeah. Everything is done on Trek's Earth is done under the watchful eye of the Federation. We don't often hear about those who oppose the unification on Earth. Well, we tried, but Fox cancelled them after 13 episodes.
There's a bunch of weird stuff. Like, it really seems like a pretty obvious Civil War allusion, which leads it into a whole bunch of, like, noble Southern soldiers post-war.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a gross thing that's been in fiction for the last...
When you dig deep into any utopian or sci-fi society, you end up in a totalitarianism nightmare. Even if it's utopia. I mean, we go back to Thomas More. It's not great for everyone.
Well, when you look at the origins of futurism and you look to the Italian futurists, for example, they were best friends with fascists. And it seems like science fiction has a long love affair with knowing what's best for everybody, and the nerds will rule the day because the nerds are the smart ones. And there's really kind of an ugly aspect to that, right?
Yeah, and I took out a whole bunch of my segment because the week we're recording this has not been a good one for our neighbors to the south, and the rest of my segment got really depressing. And I'm going to turn it over to Jem now for more depressing segments, so we'll leave it where it is. Star Trek, yay. Totalitarianism, nay.
I was going to talk about The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is basically just Wikipedia on a smartphone. But I couldn't possibly waste my segment talking about something so fun and interesting and not at all grim.
And doesn't make you panic.
So I was thinking I would say something meaningful about the Terminator and the modern machinery of war. But for the first time in recent memory, I did not actually prepare a segment for this show, really. I jotted a couple notes down, but I spent my time mostly doing revisions for a mostly unrelated short story I've been working on instead. So in place of my usual thing, let's just kind of chat about this stuff. People who know me know that over the last several years, I've gone from being, your bog standard skeptic techno-optimist to having a much more cynical outlook. And these days I have deep misgivings about tech culture and technology in general. Some of that has to do with the current political moment that we live in and my growing awareness of vast systemic problems that have plagued society for centuries, but, I was blissfully unaware of.
You weren't alive for most of those centuries. We'll give you a pass on those.
Yeah. And I think some of it, too, has to do with my growing awareness of the way technology and capitalism interface, having worked in the field of tech for 12 years or so now. So, why? Why do I feel these deep misgivings about the way technology is used? Why is kind of the point? It's the question and the answer. I feel like we should always be asking why these technologies exist, why they're developed. It's convenient, right, that we can unlock our phones with our faces, but who is funding the development of that technology, and why are they doing it? What do they hope to gain? Facial recognition is incredibly useful in surveillance technology. It is useful for identifying people that the government is looking for. Let's change tracks for a sec. Let's talk more about Terminator stuff, right?
Less Philip K. Dick, please.
Right. So you've all seen Big Dog, right? The Boston Dynamics robot?
No.
One that opens doors?
I'll show you a picture. It looks like a donkey, actually. I'll pull up a quick video, and we'll link this in the show notes.
Oh, dear God, that thing is terrifying.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Why does it sound like a mosquito on speed?
I know. It's all the machinery.
Or maybe I've seen it without the packs that it's carrying. Because the legs look familiar.
It looks a lot like an animal, right? A lot of people I've heard mention thinking that it's cute. You know, like at one point in this video, somebody like pushes it, and you can see it stumble and get its balance, right?
Yeah.
It's fascinating technology. It's really cool. And it's, it's like a droid from Star Wars. Mm-hmm. It's neat. It's cute. It's fun. Like, maybe it's scary. It does kind of look like one of those wolves that attacks you in, like, Wolfenstein. But it's also a military robot whose development was funded by DARPA, the U.S. military's Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. As such, what it represents is pretty terrifying. This is why I find techno-optimism troubling. It can easily gloss over the reality with, ooh, shiny, cool, it's the future now.
I feel personally attacked.
I guess my point is, when we're looking at a new technology, like the space race brought us all sorts of fantastic newfangled gadgets, like microwaves and Teflon and what have you, right? And Tang.
Everybody's got a Sputnik in their backyard still.
Right. But we should not lose sight of the context, which was like the threat of thermonuclear annihilation.
Mutually assured destruction.
Right. That sort of undergirded that march of progress. And a lot of the benefits that we end up seeing with these technologies, in our phones or in our computers, in our graphics cards, whatever, a lot of those benefits that we see are silver linings at best. They are artifacts that aren't actually the goal, but they're spun off of these projects whose actual goal is often military in nature.
So we're heading toward a future where the Terminator comes and murders us.
No, because we will never perfect time travel. It will not happen.
The way I see it, the Terminator doesn't have to be truly autonomous for it to be worthy of concern. I personally am not worried about a Skynet situation. Not at least in my lifetime or the lifetimes of my children. I've had this argument with skeptics before who are very concerned about existential threats posed by AI. And I'm not an expert. I have a computer science degree with a specialization in AI. I worked in machine learning for a decade, off and on, but I'm not an expert. But general AI, that's not on the visible horizon.
No.
Instead, what I'm worried about is Terminators that are remote controlled. Because we have them already. Drones, or UAVs, although they don't have to be aerial vehicles, they allow us to wage war while distancing ourselves from our killing. They turn soldiers into video game players. Now, the argument that this new technology is bad because it allows us to kill more efficiently and at a farther distance, I mean, like you could apply the same argument to muskets, right?
Yeah, any kind of catapults or something like that.
I don't think that makes it a bad argument, although, you're not going to stop the march of technology. I'm not optimistic about putting any particular genie back in any particular bottle. But robots and drones, not only do they affect the way soldiers wage war and the way generals wage war, but they can also affect the way politicians think about waging war and the way citizens think about war. The United States has been de facto at war for 17 years. It's been 17 years of unending war. That's a long time. If you're a drone pilot, you can be at war in the morning and then go home to your family in the evening. And it's a normal day. Fewer and fewer of our people, our soldiers, are dying in war now that we have drones. And the cost of war is a lot less visible when it's not being fought on our shores anyway. Now, I understand that the idea that soldiers are not dying in war is an attractive one to a lot of people. I know several people who are involved in the armed forces. I'm not particularly close with any of them. My feelings about their involvement are complex, but I don't wish them ill. But what I'm concerned with is that we're creating these machines that make it easier to wage war. And in so doing, war loses its immediacy. It loses its impact. The barriers to fighting a war are lowered. And I don't want war to be an easy state to be in. I wanted this to be a conversation. Please feel free to jump in at any point.
I'm sorry, no, you didn't.
This is a dirge.
It's well written, honey, and you make a fabulous, though depressing point, and it's very difficult to jump in on that.
Agreed.
Yeah. Yes. Well said, Jim.
I don't want more of, quote-unquote, our soldiers to die either, but I think the point of if politicians don't see kids going off to war and dying, there's a lot less incentive to make the war stop. There are kids enlisting in the army right now who have never known a time that we were not at war, that the States was not at war.
Yeah.
Not us, even though it feels very close.
Yeah, it feels close for us. Imagine how close it feels in Iraq or Syria.
Yeah, that's who I'm worried about. The people who we don't see.
Yeah.
And who don't have the luxury of American drones killing Syrian drones. Instead, they're bombing Syrian hospitals.
Mm-hmm. Warfare has become totally asymmetric because, in large part, of American hegemony. But it's unlikely to remain that way. But I don't want to make this just about, oh no, maybe they'll get drones too, and won't that be bad? No, it's already bad. It's okay for us to care about people who are from other countries. Right?
Very much so.
So it's not just misgivings about a Skynet-like scenario that makes the Terminator scary. It doesn't matter if Schwarzenegger was sent back in time to kill John Connor by a sentient computer or just by a different nation. Mm-hmm. And it's not even just militaries we have to contend with. I mean, maybe you, for some reason, trust the military. I don't know why anybody would do that, but hey, people have different opinions about these things. But military hardware is being manufactured by private companies like Lockheed Martin and Boeing. The operation of these UAVs is typically outsourced to private contractors as well. Technology of this type, I haven't seen this happen with armed UAVs, but you see it with surveillance drones all the time, and you see it with, arms. But technology like this often finds its way into the hands of quasi-military private contractors that the United States insists aren't really mercenary companies, like Academy, formerly Z Services, formerly Blackwater. Sidebar, Academy really is an innocuous sounding name, isn't it?
Yeah.
It barely...
It's very Umbrella Corp.
it barely calls to mind at all the indiscriminate massacre of more than a dozen Iraqi civilians.
People can 3D print guns now. There's no reason why we can't 3D print an entire attack drone.
Yeah.
Very soon, if not now.
What I'm trying to say is that the potential future of fully automated robots on the battlefield is scary for obvious sci-fi reasons, right? But we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that there are people today who effectively have to deal with Terminators being sent after them. These Terminators are just operated by humans in another country.
All negativity accounted for, but aside at the moment, we have some pretty cool stuff, and some of it works better than what we saw in TV and in the movies and that now, partially because, like you were saying, Ashlyn, we actually have good technology now that can get us to the things that we wanted to see. But some of the stuff is still, we're in the future, but it's still not that great. Like, it's good, but it's not amazing. It's not magic, you know? And that's part, there's so many things, like the replicator. I guess the one thing I'm thinking of, I came across this machine that builds itself like the replicator. And what it essentially is it's a Keurig for food. So you put in these discs of dehydrated food, and it mixes it and heats it and serves it up hot for you, and that's great, but it's still a boy soup.
No, I was thinking of that Heinz commercial. You remember that Heinz commercial?
But it still serves up small portions of dehydrated, warmed up food, right? You're not getting a gourmet meal, so it is not the replicator. And I feel like there's a lot of technologies that are really cool, but still in that stage now.
Well, I always liked on Star Trek how they made it pretty clear that, like, replicated food was pretty good, but the homemade stuff was better still. Like, they never made it sound like replicator food was the be-all and end-all. There were still people on the show who really preferred to cook, and if you were having a fancy date, you would cook for real.
Okay.
And I thought that was cool.
And then there's things that I think the technologies are cool, and maybe this is just me being a bit of a Luddite, but at the same time, I hear Jem talk about how he wants this. He wants to physically be able to climb things in his virtual reality, and that I'm like, there are trees outside and rocks outside. Like,
but
it's
you could
cool.
get hurt out there.
Well, you will obviously get hurt in the room as you did, Ashlyn. So I think it's not that it's not cool to come up with these things, but sometimes it's like, but that exists in such a better form and you are reinventing the wheel so hard right now. Like, why?
And I don't want people to think that we're all doom and gloom, because there's things that are being developed out there without a military application or without a nefarious purpose. And yeah, I would much rather spend a day outside. I'm not going to climb any trees right now because I'm almost 40 and my body doesn't do that anymore.
Well, that's fine.
But I'll sit under a tree. And it's not even one that you have to kick if the hologram goes away in memory of a real tree.
So, another quick, just a brainstorm. What are some sci-fi technologies that you are surprised we don't have yet?
Jetpacks.
That's always an interesting one.
We have jetpacks. They just don't work very well.
Yeah.
We haven't figured out small, safe fuels.
Yeah,
That's our
battery
big
technology.
Yeah, because so much of what we have now runs on batteries, and batteries are getting better and better, but they're still a huge chunk of things, and they still, you still have to plug in your phone every day or twice a day or something like that. Like, we have electric vehicles, but they're way heavier because they have to carry around this huge battery.
And until we give up our reliance on fossil fuels, they won't they won't make electric cars that are light and airy and fun.
And they're trying.
Oh,
the breakthrough is hard to find, apparently.
I think they'd find it a little bit easier if they didn't have... that's me being cynical, and this is not a cynical segment.
So, I want to say, with all of this automation, we should see a significant reduction in work hours, right? Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot more productivity happening. But, obviously, that's because of concentration of wealth, right?
Yeah.
There is more wealth, but it is less evenly distributed. And so instead of us being able to have a house on a single salary for somebody who works 20 hours a week, that money goes to CEOs.
Yeah.
That does rely on social structures, and we have to get our social structures up to where they are to support our technology structures. Guaranteed minimum income, guaranteed housing.
It seems like our podcast always comes back here.
Yeah, let's make the world a better place for the people who live in it, and not just the 1%.
The question was, what technologies are you surprised we don't have yet?
I'm surprised I'm surprised the proletariat hasn't risen up yet.
It's not a technology!
I'm surprised we don't have cultured meat products on shelves yet.
Yeah.
A&W's trying.
Nah, it's a good burger.
It freaks me out.
Oh, really? It's so good.
I've had it, but it freaks me out.
Yeah, I thought it was tasty.
For our American listeners, Canadian A&W has the Beyond Meat Burger available.
Which you guys can find at places like Whole Foods.
Yes, but we cannot.
I had some smuggled up.
Yeah, we bought some when we were in the States. But yeah, in Canada, the only place you can get the Beyond Meat Burger, basically, is A&W. And in the States, the only place you can get it is in a store.
I want teleportation. I'm not surprised we don't have it, but I want it.
Yeah, like I'm on the same boat. I think that would be such a step up, but I think that comes after amazing battery capacity somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm running like 10 steps in the future saying things I want, not things that I think are going to be possible in my lifetime.
Okay, so do you want to get into the transporter problem then? Or?
No.
Okay.
All right, well, we tried to end this show on a happy note. What are we talking about next month, Jem?
Well, remember when I said I couldn't possibly talk about something as fun and interesting as The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy on the podcast?
Oh, dear.
Well, I lied, because next month we're talking about Wikipedia.
Interesting. All right, good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
You've been listening to Life, the Universe, and Everything Else. If you have any questions or comments, or you'd like to suggest a topic for the show, send us an email at lueepodcast@winnipegskeptics.com. If you want to show your support, give us a review on iTunes or Stitcher, follow us on Twitter or Facebook, or just share the show with a friend. Our music is produced by the very talented Ian James, and this episode was edited by Lauren Bailey.
Life. Don't talk to me about life.
Let Ashlyn do her segment, you guys.
our first Star Trek reference was that shitty.
We talked about the holodeck already.
Okay, no,
Yeah.
that's fair.
It's because you're not paying attention to Ashlyn.